Want to bet? You can do it at Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook. The World Series may be over, but we still have a lot of football and hockey to talk about and bet on. Bet pre-game, live in play, or on one of our many prop bets. Made for Canadians by Canadians, Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all sports betting has to offer. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. Ontario only, 19 and over. Please play responsibly. We talked about how the Vancouver Canucks are not in great shape. They're still not in a good place right now. Losers of their last three on this Canadian road trip, this Eastern Canadian road trip. Now they're going towards Buffalo. They'll be playing there tomorrow, I believe. And it's not looking good for this team. I mean, I caught a bit of the Canucks-Leafs game. I caught a bit of a Canucks-Canadiens game too. This Canucks team just looks awful. They're not playing for each other. They're just defensively, they're not good. There's just so much wrong with this team.
Yeah, and it just feels like we're getting to the point, Julian, where something has to give. They've won 4 out of their 16 games to start the year. I know they've picked up a couple additional points with losses in overtime and what have you, but they're in a worse spot arguably now than they were a year ago when they fired everybody, right? Jim Benning and his staff in the front office and Travis Green at the time, the head coach. And you just wonder if they're getting back to that position where they have to pull the trigger on more changes. Jim Rutherford gave a radio interview last week in Vancouver, made some headlines, pretty publicly, I would say, questioned some of what's gone on with his head coach, Bruce Boudreau, in terms of the players being organized and ready to play. He also had another part in that interview that maybe didn't get as much attention, which was just saying that it might be time to send a message to the players at the end of this road trip. Well, we were going to get there this week with Tuesday's game, as you mentioned, against the Sabres being the last of a 5-game trip. And so, I think that this could be a big week as the Canucks return home and management figures out what it's going to do. It's not a hot take at this point to say that Bruce Boudreau appears to be on borrowed time there as the head coach. He's in the final year of his contract. I know they're also paying Travis Green still, but that's the easy move, I would call it, to pin it on the head coach, to bring someone else new in. We've heard Jim Rutherford in a couple actual interviews sort of question how the training camp went and things like that, which generally fall under the purview of the head coach. I wonder about bigger changes though, too. I mean, Bo Horvat has had a tremendous start to this year, filling the net to the tune of more than everyone in the league except for Connor McDavid. And he's in a contract year too. And so, at what point are they more considering moving on from him potentially as a trade piece? Obviously they have some other players if they want to trade some of their good players. Where they're in trouble is having too many players making too big of a salary that aren't able to make that impact at this point in their careers. And so something's got to give. You just feel the pressure mounting around them. Just getting a feel at Saturday's morning skate here in Toronto. Talking to a few of the guys quietly, just that I think everyone's looking around waiting for something to happen. And so I suspect that will come sooner than later for the Canucks.
It is wild considering last year, Bruce Boudreau hailed as a bit of a mini savior with how everyone was going on with the Bruce there it is chants. And now he's in a position where his time may very well be up. I mean, he never seemed as if he was Jim Rutherford's guy. So, and plus the fact that his contract expires at the end of the year plays into it too. Just a bit of a weird 1-year situation for Bruce Boudreau if it trends the way that it's looking to trend.
Right. One, look, he was hired. He's an older man, and he was hired to be there for a short-term fix, essentially. Like this was kind of what was designed. I mean, obviously, I think they expected this season to go better than it has in terms of wins and losses, but it wasn't a long-term decision when he came in. I should say my own opinion is I don't think that there's a coaching issue here. I think that it's a roster construction issue that dates back to the previous administration. Maybe if we're going to find fault in the current group, it's that they maybe thought they were going to be better than they were, that they could just patch it over and keep going. And, that might have, that appears like it was a mistaken view of where things are at. Plus, they signed JT Miller to a long-term deal. that already looks like a questionable decision, and you're only, a quarter of the way into, a contract that now has 7+ years remaining on it. So there's a lot of problems in Vancouver. The obvious thing from afar, and I realize there's pressures financially and all these types of things, is just why not do a rebuild? I mean, the other thing that's happening on a parallel track here is Connor Bedard is putting up basically a goal and 2 assists a game right now in the Western Hockey League. He happens to be from Vancouver, is a Canucks fan. I mean, something good could come out of the smoldering wreckage of what exists there right now in terms of potentially getting a generational player, or at least a very, very, very high-end player added to your organization. And so I wonder if they actually do finally embrace a rebuild. And what's especially weird is we're here on Hockey Hall of Fame Day, and they're, the Sedins are being celebrated. Roberto Luongo, 3 key members of the organization, the Canucks organization, that really, when that team had a chance to win a Stanley Cup, should have won a Stanley Cup, in my view, in the early 2010s. They were that good, winning President's Trophy, got to Game 7 of the final in 2011 against Boston. Is that the organization hasn't had a coherent plan since those players basically moved on or moved into the later years of their career. Obviously Luongo was traded back to Florida. The Sedins aged out, and they've just avoided going towards a rebuild. And you wonder how things might be different had they done it sooner. But what's that old saying? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. To start down the road towards something great now. And so I do wonder, with the way this season has started, with the way last season went, with a new front office in place led by Jim Rutherford, Patrick Alvin, if they embark on a new direction, because it seems to me that the fan base there is just screaming for it, just wanting a plan, wanting to strip this thing down and start fresh and, build up through the draft.
I wonder, just with the way this roster is constructed now, if you have to offload that many assets to make sure you get to the bottom. They seem bad enough.
It's fair, but they have some assets that, would have appeal. Now, it would be really difficult to trade a Quinn Hughes or Elias Pettersson, Thatcher Demko, some of the players that are, I guess they're not young anymore, moving into the middle stretches of their career, but have shown promise. I mean, those players would have value, would bring back a lot. I think that the challenge is they have some older guys on their blue line that might be difficult to move it with their contracts, things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, because they're having a difficult time winning now, but I think they could speed things up, because right now, to me, even though it's been a really tough start, they're still good enough to finish from here on in at 500 and then finish, somewhere, say the 10th worst team, and be picking 10th or 11th or 12th in the draft. And they're still good enough not to be at the bottom of the league. But management might intervene and make sure that doesn't end up being the case. And, that's really the question, I guess, that they have to answer here in these next few months.